A colossal structure once stood in Egypt that made the pyramids seem small. This was the legendary labyrinth, a sprawling complex of thousands of rooms described by the ancient historian Herodotus. By the end of this journey, you will know the real secrets behind this lost wonder and why its discovery could rewrite history. We will explore why it was built, what was hidden in its forbidden underground level, and how an entire architectural marvel simply vanished from the earth. What forgotten truth about ancient civilizations are we still missing? Our story truly begins with a single man standing before an impossible sight. Around the year 450 before the Common Era, the Greek historian Herodotus traveled to Egypt. He was a curious man, gathering stories and facts about the ancient world, but nothing could have prepared him for what he encountered near a vast body of water known as Lake Moeris. There he claimed to have seen a building so magnificent it made the Great Pyramid seem almost modest. This was the labyrinth. He described it with a sense of pure astonishment that has echoed down through the centuries. He wrote of a single massive roof stretching over a complex of 3,000 rooms. These were not just empty chambers, there were halls and colonnades, a bewildering maze of stone passages that seemed to defy logic. But the most compelling part of his account is the division he reported. He said the labyrinth was split into two distinct levels. The upper level was staggering enough, but it was the lower level that held the true mystery. This was a forbidden, subterranean world. Herodotus insisted he saw this wonder with his own eyes, yet the Egyptian priests guarding the site explicitly forbade him from descending below. They refused him entry into the underground chambers, telling him that the crypts of the kings who built the labyrinth and the sacred crocodiles they worshipped were housed there. This single act of denial instantly transformed the labyrinth from a marvel of architecture into a vault of secrets. Why would they go to such lengths to hide what was below? What was so sacred or so dangerous that it had to remain forever unseen by an outsider's eyes? That forbidden doorway, which one of history's first great historians was forced to walk away from, became the seed from which all its legends grew. Herodotus was not the only ancient voice captivated by this colossal structure. Other respected historians, separated by centuries and cultures, also wrote of the labyrinth, and their collective testimony builds a powerful case for its reality. Strabo, the Greek geographer who traveled to Egypt around 25 before the Common Era, described it not just as a maze but as a grand palace, a place of immense beauty and architectural splendor built from a single massive stone. Then there was Diodorus Siculus, a Sicilian historian writing in the 1st century before the Common Era, who confirmed the sheer scale of the complex and its intricate, winding passages. Even the Roman naturalist Pliny the Elder, a man known for his rigorous and encyclopedic approach to facts, included the Egyptian labyrinth in his great work, Natural History. He wrote of its dizzying complexity and the near impossibility of finding one's way out without a guide. What makes their accounts so compelling is that these were not men copying from one another. They were independent observers, each visiting or reporting on Egypt across a span of 400 years. When multiple sources from different eras all describe the same extraordinary place, it stops being just a traveler's tall tale. The sheer weight of their testimony transforms the labyrinth from a myth whispered on the wind into a tangible, historical probability. This was not one man's fantasy, but a monument so grand it left an indelible mark on the ancient world's memory. So if this labyrinth truly existed, where on earth could it have stood? The search for its physical location begins with a body of water Herodotus called Lake Moeris. For centuries, this name was a ghost on old maps, but modern scholars have confidently identified it with a real and ancient lake at the heart of the Fayum oasis, known today as Lake Karan. The Fayum itself is a vast, fertile depression west of the Nile River, a lush green bowl in the middle of the desert. It was not just any region, it was the personal breadbasket of the pharaohs, a sprawling garden of agricultural wealth sustained by a complex network of canals. This was a place of immense strategic and symbolic power. Building the labyrinth here at the junction of the desert and the cultivated land made perfect sense. It was a statement of control over the life-giving waters and the chaotic forces of nature, a monument to order rising from the edge of the wild, and it is here, on the southern edge of this fertile plain, that we find the most compelling candidate for the labyrinth's remains. Just a short distance from the lake shore lies the pyramid complex of a pharaoh named Amenemhat III at a place called Hawara. His pyramid still stands, weathered and crumbling, but it is the vast, low-lying foundation beside it that has captured the imagination of explorers for generations. This is not a towering structure, but a sprawling, stone-strewn platform, the footprint of something colossal. The sheer scale of this foundation matches the descriptions left by the ancients, a vast complex that could have housed thousands of rooms. Could these worn stones, now largely lost to the marsh and the sand, be all that is left of the legendary labyrinth? The connection is almost too perfect, tying the myth directly to the tomb of a powerful king. But if this is the place, what secrets did its lower level hold, and why was it so deliberately erased from the landscape? The man behind this impossible structure was one of Egypt's most formidable rulers, Pharaoh Amenemhat III. He did not just rule Egypt, he mastered it, holding the throne for nearly 5 decades during its golden Middle Kingdom era. His reign was not one of simple maintenance, but of profound transformation. He turned his attention to the Pharaoh Oasis, that vast fertile depression, and saw not just a swampy marshland but a kingdom of untapped potential. Under his command, one of the ancient world's most ambitious engineering projects began. A colossal land reclamation effort was launched, with armies of workers redirecting the Nile's waters through a complex system of canals, draining marshes and turning thousands of acres of shallow lake into rich, arable farmland. This was more than a public works project. It was the creation of a new heartland for Egypt, a personal estate for the pharaoh that fed the nation and filled its granaries. And at the center of this newly tamed landscape, he built his eternal home, the pyramid at Hawara. This pyramid was an engineering marvel in its own right, constructed with a radical and complex internal design intended to outwit tomb robbers. But the pyramid was only one part of his grand vision. Right beside it, stretching out across the land, was the foundation for something far larger. It is here that the man and the myth converge perfectly. A pharaoh with the absolute power, the resources, and the singular vision to reshape the very land itself would be the only person capable of commissioning a structure as audacious as the labyrinth. It stands to reason that this sprawling complex was not a separate temple, but the monumental, processional entrance to his own mortuary complex, the grandest antechamber to the afterlife ever conceived. The labyrinth was the culmination of his life's work, a stone representation of his control over both the fertile land and the chaotic desert, a final, permanent statement of his godlike power on earth. The name labyrinth conjures images of a bewildering puzzle, a place designed to trap and confuse, but the Egyptian labyrinth was almost certainly nothing of the sort. Its purpose was not confusion but profound order. Think of it not as a maze but as the ultimate national headquarters. This sprawling complex was likely the beating heart of Egypt's Middle Kingdom, a place where the administrative, religious, and political power of Pharaoh Amenemhat III converged into one breathtaking monument. Imagine a structure that functioned as a combination of a royal palace, a supreme court, a national treasury, and the most sacred temple in the land, all under one colossal roof. It was a machine for governing an empire. With its thousands of rooms, it could have housed the countless scribes, priests, and officials needed to manage the kingdom's vast grain stores from the Pharaoh, its tax collection, and its legal decrees. This was not a place you got lost in. It was a place where the state's business was conducted with divine precision. For the regional governors and priests who were summoned here, it would have been a terrifying and awe-inspiring display of the pharaoh's absolute reach. They would walk through endless halls and colonnades, a physical manifestation of the king's power that was far more effective than any army. It was, in essence, a university for the elite, where they learned their place in the cosmic order dictated by the god-king. Yet, its most vital role was even more profound than governance. The labyrinth was almost certainly the grand mortuary temple for Amenemhat III's eternal cult. In ancient Egyptian belief, a pharaoh did not simply die. He transformed into a divine entity, a god who continued to influence the fertility of the land and the fate of the nation from beyond the grave. The labyrinth was the engine room for this eternal worship. Priests would have performed daily rituals in its sacred chambers, offering food, incense, and prayers to the statue of the deceased pharaoh, maintaining his divine presence and ensuring his continued blessing upon Egypt. This was the ultimate purpose of the labyrinth, to forever blur the line between the living world and the divine, to house the spirit of a king who had tamed the waters and fed his people, ensuring his power would echo through eternity. The true genius of the labyrinth was not its complexity, but its unity, a single structure designed to manage both an empire and a soul. The labyrinth's true purpose becomes clear when you see it not as a building, but as a map of the universe written in stone. Its design was a direct reflection of the ancient Egyptian worldview, a perfect mirror of their understanding of cosmic order. That division Herodotus described between upper and lower levels was far more than architectural. It was a profound spiritual statement. Think of the 3,000 rooms split evenly into 1,500 above ground and 1,500 below. This perfect symmetry could have represented the fundamental duality that defined Egypt itself, the eternal balance between Upper and Lower Egypt, the two lands united under one pharaoh. But the symbolism runs even deeper. The upper world, bathed in sunlight and accessible to priests and officials, mirrored the realm of the living, the domain of the sun god Ra as he sailed across the sky. The forbidden lower level, shrouded in perpetual darkness, was a physical model of the Duat, the mysterious Egyptian underworld. This was not a place of punishment, but a realm of transformation and rebirth where Ra traveled each night, battling chaos to be born again at dawn. To walk the labyrinth's passages, then, was to embark on a sacred journey. A high priest would not simply be moving from one chamber to another. He would be ritually tracing the path of the sun god, navigating the corridors of the Duat, symbolically overcoming chaos and emerging into the light, thus ensuring the sun would rise again and the cosmic order would hold. The labyrinth was a machine for maintaining creation itself. Its walls and halls a permanent, functioning prayer for the balance of the world. Every stone was a word in a silent, eternal hymn to order over chaos, life over death. So what profound secret was so dangerous it had to be locked away in that model of the underworld? That forbidden lower level was not merely a basement, it was the heart of the entire labyrinth's sacred power. Herodotus was turned away from a gateway, a portal leading directly into the Egyptian concept of the afterlife, the Duat. While the upper level mirrored the world of the living, this sealed, subterranean complex was a perfect, functioning model of the underworld itself, a place where the boundaries between life and death were thinnest. But what precisely was so vital that it had to be hidden in such profound darkness? The answer likely lies in three profound secrets, each more sacred than the last. First, this underground realm almost certainly housed the most revered religious relics of the Middle Kingdom. These were not just statues, but the cult images of the gods themselves, objects believed to be charged with the deity's actual presence. To have them stored here in this model of the Duat would have been an act of incredible spiritual power, connecting the gods directly to the cycle of death and rebirth. Second, we have the account of the sacred crocodiles. The priests told Herodotus the crocodiles were down there, and they were not lying. In the Fayum, the primary god worshipped was Sobek, the powerful crocodile deity of the Nile, fertility and military might. These animals were not mere pets, they were living incarnations of the god. Their burial in the labyrinth's crypts would have been a ceremony of immense importance, mummifying these divine creatures and entombing them in the underworld level to ensure Sobek's continued favor and the Nile's eternal flow. But the third and most compelling possibility is that this is where Pharaoh Amenemhat III himself was laid to rest. His pyramid at Hawara was notoriously plundered in antiquity, its royal tomb empty. What if his true burial chamber was never in the pyramid at all? What if the most cunning trick of this master builder was to hide his final resting place deep within the labyrinth's model of the underworld? His sarcophagus would have been placed in the deepest chamber, a king not just buried but actively residing within the symbolic duat, becoming one with the cycle of rebirth he worked his entire life to sustain. This would make the labyrinth not just his mortuary temple, but his actual tomb, a direct portal ensuring his divine transformation and eternal rule over a perfectly ordered cosmos. The secret guarded so fiercely was not just treasure, it was the very mechanism of immortality. To understand the labyrinth's deepest secrets, we must meet the terrifying deity who ruled this watery domain. The Pharaoh Oasis was the sacred territory of Sobek, the crocodile god. He was a being of profound duality, a symbol of both the Nile's life-giving fertility and its raw, untamable power. Picture the creature itself, a perfect predator that has glided through the waters for millions of years. In Sobek, the Egyptians saw this power made divine. He was the lord of the river's abundance, the one who ensured the annual flood that nourished their fields. Yet his open jaws represented sudden chaos and death, a reminder that the same waters that gave life could also take it away. Appeasing such a god was not a matter of choice, it was a necessity for survival, especially in a region like the Fayum, which depended entirely on controlled water. This is why the labyrinth was almost certainly his primary cult center, the grandest temple ever dedicated to the crocodile god. Within its walls, particularly in that forbidden lower level, there would have been specially constructed pools or chambers housing live, sacred crocodiles. These animals were not merely symbols, they were believed to be living vessels for Sobek's own spirit. They were adorned with gold and jewels, fed choice cuts of meat by the priests, and treated with the reverence due to a god walking the earth. The labyrinth, therefore, was not just a monument to a pharaoh, but a machine for managing divine power. By worshipping Sobek here, at the very heart of their agricultural and administrative hub, Amenemhat III and his priests were performing a continuous ritual of control. They were harnessing the god's chaotic energy, channeling it into the canals and the fields, ensuring the region's prosperity and, by extension, the stability of all Egypt. The labyrinth was the point of contact between human ambition and primordial force, a place where a king tried to make a pact with a crocodile. A structure of such immense scale and spiritual significance does not simply disappear by accident. Its vanishing was a slow, deliberate process of erasure, a theft of stone that spanned centuries. The labyrinth's decline likely began as Egypt itself changed. The powerful central government of the Middle Kingdom fractured, and the pharaohs who followed perhaps lacked the resources or the will to maintain such a colossal and specialized complex. As the royal cult of Amenemhat III faded from memory, the labyrinth would have slowly transformed from a living, breathing center of power into a silent, echoing relic. Its roofs may have begun to leak, sand drifting into its sacred corridors, yet its true death blow came not from neglect but from demand. The Romans, masters of practical engineering, saw the ancient world not as a museum to be preserved but as a quarry to be exploited. When they took control of Egypt, they looked upon the labyrinth and saw a gold mine of pre-cut, high-quality stone. The massive limestone blocks and polished granite columns that had once formed the walls of a divine underworld were systematically pried loose, loaded onto barges, and transported across Lake Moeris. They were used to build new cities, Roman baths, and fortifications throughout the Fayum region. Imagine a Roman villa or a government building in the city of Crocodilopolis, its foundations and finest facades made from the very stones that once charted the path of the sun god. The Romans were not vandals in the simple sense. They were recyclers on an epic scale, dismantling a wonder to fuel their own empire. Piece by piece, column by column, the labyrinth was physically carried away until almost nothing remained but its vast, empty foundation, which itself slowly sank into the marsh. The location, once a destination for historians and pilgrims, was gradually forgotten, its memory fading into the very landscape it was built to conquer. The labyrinth did not collapse, it was cannibalized. Its body used to build a new world atop the bones of the old. Centuries of silence were finally broken by the sound of a German scholar's boots crunching across the Egyptian desert. In 1843, the renowned Egyptologist Carl Richard Lepsius led a royal expedition to the very edge of the Fayum, his eyes fixed on the desolate plain near the Hawara pyramid. He arrived with hope, fueled by the ancient texts of Herodotus and Strabo, expecting to find at least some hint of the fabled walls. Instead, his team uncovered a scene of utter desolation. Stretching before them was not a maze of towering walls, but a vast, featureless plateau of crushed limestone and bedrock. It was a blank canvas, a ghost of a foundation. The scale, however, was undeniable. This barren field was immense, matching the colossal dimensions described by the ancients. Lepsius stood on what he immediately identified as the floor of the labyrinth, a single massive slab where 3,000 rooms had once stood. The structure itself was gone, but the footprint was still there, a negative space screaming of what had been lost. Then came the crucial piece of evidence, the clue that transformed his theory into fact. While surveying the area, his team discovered inscriptions in nearby tombs. Carved into the ancient walls was the name itself, the word labyrinth. This was not a later Greek addition, but an Egyptian name, proving that the legendary complex was not just a foreigner's story, but a real place with a real name in the native tongue. Lepsius had not found the walls, but he had found the memory, the first modern, archaeological thread leading directly back to the legend. He confirmed the location, but in doing so, he unveiled a deeper tragedy. The labyrinth was not just lost, it had been systematically ground into dust. Lepsius had found the ghost of the labyrinth, but it would take another 45 years for someone to finally measure its bones. That man was William Matthew Flinders Petrie, an archaeologist so meticulous he would revolutionize the entire field. In 1888, he arrived at Hawara with a singular focus to strip the site bare and see what lay beneath the sand. Where Lepsius had seen a blank plain, Petrie saw a puzzle. He assembled a massive workforce and they began the brutal, methodical work of excavation, peeling back the layers of time. What they uncovered was not a building, but its stunningly clear impression in the earth, a colossal stone platform that took his breath away. He carefully measured the foundation, a vast rectangle stretching 1,000 feet by 800 feet. To stand on that platform was to stand on the floor of a single, unified complex of almost unimaginable scale. Petrie, a man known for his cool, scientific detachment, could barely contain his awe. He wrote that the grandeur of the foundation alone surpassed even the great temples of Thebes. This was not the footprint of a confusing maze, but of a single, brilliantly organized structure, a palace of administration and faith designed to be experienced as one continuous, overwhelming whole. Yet this triumphant discovery was also a source of profound frustration. The sheer thoroughness of the destruction was staggering. The Romans and later builders had not simply knocked the walls down, they had dug out the very foundations, quarrying the site down to its base. Petrie found almost nothing of the labyrinth's walls or columns, just the empty sockets where they had once been anchored, like a mouth full of missing teeth. He had mapped the corpse of the wonder with scientific precision, but the body itself was gone, leaving him with the ultimate archaeological tease, the certainty of what had been, and the agony of its near-total absence. The dust of Flinders Petrie's excavation had long since settled, leaving a void of unanswered questions. But the story of the labyrinth was not over. It was simply waiting for a new way to be seen. The 21st century brought with it a revolutionary tool, the ability to look straight down from the sky and peer directly into the earth without ever lifting a shovel. Satellite imagery began to map the site in spectral detail, revealing subtle variations in the soil and vegetation that hinted at structures hidden just below the surface. This was the precursor to an even more powerful technology, ground-penetrating radar. Imagine sending silent pulses of energy into the ground and listening to their echoes as they bounce off buried walls and chambers, painting a sonogram of the past. This is exactly what a team of international researchers known as the Mataha expedition came to Hawara to do in 2008. Their mission was to scan the vast, empty plain beside Amenemhat's pyramid, the very foundation Petrie had mapped over a century before. What they claimed to find sent a shockwave through the world of Egyptology. Their radar data suggested that beneath meters of sand and alluvial silt lay the unmistakable signature of a massive, grid-like structure. The scans appeared to show a sprawling network of walls arranged in a precise geometric pattern directly underneath the area of the ancient foundation. It was not a natural rock formation. The sharp, right-angled lines screamed of human design. This was not the ghost of a foundation, but the potential ghost of the labyrinth's forbidden lower level, perfectly preserved in its sandy tomb, waiting in the dark. Could these ghostly echoes on a radar screen be the long-lost underworld of the labyrinth, the very place Herodotus was forbidden to enter? The Mataha findings ignited a fierce debate, a modern-day mystery fueled by ancient legend and cutting-edge science. The initial excitement over the Mataha findings was electric, promising a breakthrough centuries in the making. Yet that promise quickly curdled into one of modern archaeology's most frustrating stalemates. The team announced their radar results with confidence, declaring they had located a vast, grid-like structure buried deep beneath the sand at Hawara. To them, the data was unmistakable, the ghostly imprint of walls and chambers forming what could only be the labyrinth's legendary subterranean level. They spoke of a monumental discovery, a hidden world preserved in perfect condition, waiting just out of reach. Then, something strange happened. A heavy silence descended. The expedition's findings were never formally published in a peer-reviewed scientific journal, the standard process for validating such a claim. Instead, their announcement seemed to vanish into the desert air. Rumors began to circulate that the Egyptian Supreme Council of Antiquities, the governing body that controls all archaeological work in the country, had effectively blocked any further investigation. The official reasons were never made clear, leaving a vacuum of speculation. Was it a matter of bureaucratic caution, a desire to protect a potentially fragile site from the wrong hands, or was there something more, a reluctance to confirm a discovery that could rewrite history books and draw uncontrollable global attention to a sensitive location? This sudden halt transformed a scientific claim into a modern enigma, a mystery layered on top of an ancient one. Without solid data to examine, the wider archaeological community grew deeply skeptical. Other experts began to question the interpretation of the radar scans. Could those sharp, right-angled echoes be something other than the lost labyrinth? The Fayum region is a geologically active area, and the ground near Lake Moeris has been subjected to seismic shifts and the immense pressure of water and silt for millennia. Skeptics proposed that the grid-like patterns could be the result of natural fracturing in the bedrock, a geological phenomenon that can mimic human-made structures. Others wondered if the team had simply detected the remains of a large but relatively ordinary Roman-era settlement or quarry, built directly on top of the older, ruined foundation. The most critical question remained unanswered. If this was truly the labyrinth's lower level, why had previous excavations, including Flinders Petrie's incredibly thorough work, found no access points, no hidden staircases leading down from the vast foundation they so carefully mapped? The absence of a vertical connection was a major hole in the theory. The controversy left us with two equally compelling but opposing narratives. One tells a story of a suppressed discovery, of a hidden truth being kept from the world. The other suggests a case of wishful thinking, where the powerful allure of a legend caused researchers to see a miracle in what was merely a trick of the earth. We are left standing at the edge of that empty field, looking down, knowing that the only way to resolve the debate is to dig, yet the shovel remains frozen. The real secret of the labyrinth today is not what lies beneath the sand, but why we are not allowed to see it. Gleaming white limestone walls would have risen from the desert floor, reflecting the sun with such intensity the entire complex must have seemed like a mirage. This was not a dark, claustrophobic maze, but a radiant city under a single roof. Enormous columns of polished red granite, each one a solid piece of stone quarried from the far south, would have held up that impossible ceiling, their surfaces smooth and cool to the touch. Imagine walking through the grand entrance, a gateway flanked by colossal statues of Pharaoh Amenemhat III and the crocodile god Sobek, their stone eyes watching you pass into a world of ordered splendor. You would step into vast, open courtyards, spaces designed for sunlight and ceremony, where priests in white linen robes moved in silent procession. From there, you would be funneled into the covered halls, a seemingly endless series of pillared corridors. The ceiling high above, painted with intricate patterns of stars and hieroglyphs, would make every footstep echo. The walls themselves were not bare. They were a tapestry in stone, covered from floor to ceiling with deeply carved reliefs depicting the pharaoh's divine lineage, his triumphs over chaos, and the intricate rituals needed to sustain the gods. The air would have been thick with the scent of incense, a mix of myrrh and frankincense, burning in small alcoves to purify the space. As you moved deeper, the light from the courtyards would fade, and you would enter the sacred chapels. Here, in the dim, flickering light of oil lamps, stood the cult statues of the gods, housed in small, dark chambers. These were not rooms for public spectacle, but for the most intimate and powerful prayers, where the divine presence was believed to be almost tangible. To walk through the labyrinth was to experience a journey from the bright, public world of human power into the dark, sacred heart of divine mystery, all without ever stepping outside. It was a building designed to overwhelm the senses and humble the soul, a monument that was both a map of the cosmos and a machine for speaking with the gods. The pyramids stand as silent, solitary giants, but the labyrinth was a living, breathing city. Herodotus himself claimed it surpassed the pyramids in sheer wonder, and his reasoning reveals a fundamental difference in purpose. The Great Pyramids of Giza are ultimate monuments to the afterlife, designed to project a single pharaoh's soul toward the stars in solitary, eternal glory. Their genius is in their singular, vertical ambition. The labyrinth, by contrast, was a monument to the intricate machinery of life itself. It was horizontal, sprawling, and dizzyingly complex, housing the entire ecosystem of a functioning civilization under one roof. Where a pyramid's interior is a sealed, secret path toward a single chamber, the labyrinth contained 3,000 rooms, a universe of activity frozen in stone. The logistical challenge of its construction was of a different order altogether. Building a pyramid is a titanic feat of stacking, of moving millions of identical blocks into a perfect, stable shape. Constructing the labyrinth required the orchestration of countless different architectural elements, from vast, weight-bearing roofs and countless columns to a maze of interior walls, all while maintaining perfect symmetry and a coherent, unified design. It was not a mountain of stone, but a perfectly engineered honeycomb. This was a building that served the living as much as the dead. It was a supreme court, a national archive, a university for priests, and the central bank, all functioning simultaneously as the most sacred temple in the land. The pyramid is a statement of finality, a tomb. The labyrinth was a declaration of perpetual order, a machine designed to keep a kingdom, a religion, and a cosmos running in perfect, endless harmony. The very word labyrinth is a gift from Egypt to the world. We trace its origins not to Greece, but to the shores of Lake Moeris, where the Egyptians had a name for their colossal temple complex. They called it the Lope Row Hunt, which translates directly to the temple at the mouth of the lake. This was not a description of a maze, but a precise geographical label for Amenemhat's magnificent structure. So how did this practical Egyptian name transform into the Greek word for a bewildering maze housing a monster? The answer lies in the cultural currents of the ancient Mediterranean. Greek merchants, soldiers, and travelers began visiting Egypt in greater numbers from the 7th century before the Common Era onward. They were sophisticated and curious, yet the sheer antiquity and scale of Egyptian civilization often overwhelmed them. Imagine a Greek trader, having heard whispers of a building so vast it contained 3,000 rooms, finally standing before the ruins at Hawara. He would not have seen the administrative genius or the cosmic symbolism. He would have seen a foundation of unimaginable size, a chaotic jumble of demolished walls and collapsed corridors stretching to the horizon. The sheer, incomprehensible complexity of the layout, even in its ruined state, would have seemed deliberately confusing. The name itself, Lope Row Hunt, would have been a strange and foreign sound to his ears. It is easy to see how, over time and through countless retellings, this unfamiliar term could have been adapted into the more pronounceable Greek word labyrinthos. The place was a maze, so the name became the maze, but the story did not end with a simple change of language. The Greeks took this concept of an impossibly complex building and wove it into the very fabric of their own mythology. They already had a tale of a cruel king, Minos, and a terrifying half-man, half-bull creature, the Minotaur. What they needed was a prison for the monster, a place so confusing it could never be escaped. The ruined, sprawling footprint of the Egyptian labyrinth provided the perfect inspiration. The real labyrinth was a place of sacred order, but to an outsider, its sheer scale suggested chaos and confinement. The Greeks transformed the Egyptian temple of divine power into the Cretan maze of monstrous imprisonment. They replaced the sacred crocodiles of Sobek with the ferocious Minotaur and the benevolent Pharaoh with the tyrannical King Minos. This was not plagiarism, but a classic act of cultural borrowing, where one civilization's greatest wonder becomes another's most potent legend. The real labyrinth was a machine for maintaining cosmic order, but its ghost gave birth to a story of heroic struggle against primal chaos. The true treasure of the labyrinth may not have been gold or jewels, but something far more valuable: knowledge. Think of those 3,000 rooms not just as administrative offices or sacred chapels, but as the ultimate library of the ancient world. This was likely the central archive of Egypt's Middle Kingdom, a repository for scrolls that contained the accumulated wisdom of millennia. Within its guarded halls, priests and scribes would have curated sacred religious texts detailing the precise rituals for speaking with the gods. They would have stored intricate astronomical charts mapping the movements of stars and planets, data essential for predicting the Nile's annual flood and maintaining the agricultural calendar that fed the nation. There would have been advanced mathematical treatises containing secrets of geometry and engineering that allowed them to build on such an impossible scale, and meticulous historical records chronicling the reigns of pharaohs long forgotten by the outside world. This was not merely a collection of information, it was the beating heart of a civilization's intellectual and spiritual identity. The loss of such an archive is almost too profound to calculate. When the labyrinth was dismantled, this priceless repository of knowledge gathered over centuries would have been scattered, burned for fuel, or left to rot in the damp Egyptian air. Entire genres of literature, scientific understanding, and historical memory would have simply vanished. The destruction of this single complex may have set human progress back by centuries, forcing later cultures to painfully rediscover truths that the Egyptian priests had already mastered and preserved. The labyrinth's greatest secret was not a hidden chamber, but a lost library, and its burning was one of history's most devastating intellectual tragedies. This single fact changes everything. The water table beneath the Fayum has risen dramatically since the time of the pharaohs. The same intricate canal system that once made this desert bloom has, over the centuries, allowed water to seep back into the land, silently flooding the low-lying areas. The labyrinth's foundation at Hawara sits in a literal bowl, and if the Mataha expedition's radar hints are correct, any subterranean level would now be completely submerged. This is not a destruction, but a preservation. Water, the very element the labyrinth was built to control, may have become its ultimate protector. Imagine those forbidden underground halls not as dusty, collapsed tombs, but as time capsules perfectly sealed in a dark, anaerobic bath. The same conditions that would quickly rot wood and papyrus in the open air can, when an environment is completely flooded and devoid of oxygen, miraculously preserve them. Organic materials that would have crumbled to dust millennia ago in a dry tomb, things like wooden cult statues, ivory chests, and most importantly, the labyrinth's vast library of papyrus scrolls could still be there. They would be resting in the cool, still water, their delicate fibers intact, waiting in the dark. The water has created a barrier more effective than any stone wall, locking the labyrinth's core away from looters, from the erosive desert wind, and even from archaeologists who lack the means to safely enter. The greatest treasures of Amenemhat III's reign may not have been plundered. They may simply be sleeping at the bottom of a hidden, underground lake. This presents a tantalizing, yet excruciating modern dilemma. How do you explore a flooded maze without destroying it? The murky water would make visibility zero, and any disturbance of the sediment could permanently cloud the environment and damage irreplaceable artifacts. Sending divers into such a confined, unstable space would be incredibly dangerous and potentially disastrous for the site itself. The technology to conduct a non-invasive survey of a water-filled archaeological site is still in its infancy. We would need sophisticated underwater drones equipped with sonar and sensors that could map the chambers without physical contact, or perhaps even develop methods to safely pump the water out after stabilizing the entire structure, a project of staggering complexity and cost. The labyrinth's final secret is therefore protected by a liquid lock, and the key to that lock has not yet been forged. We are left with a profound and haunting possibility. The heart of one of the ancient world's greatest wonders is still here, holding its breath beneath the water and sand, waiting for us to learn how to see in the dark. That final image of a lost world sleeping beneath the water is a powerful one, but the labyrinth never truly vanished. It escaped its stone foundations and found a new life, its forms shifting to live on in the heart of human creativity. The legend of this impossible structure seeped into our collective consciousness, becoming the ultimate symbol of any complex, mysterious, and hidden world. You can see its influence everywhere, a ghost in the architecture of our imagination. During the Renaissance, European nobility became obsessed with recreating the experience, not with stone but with nature. They planted intricate hedge mazes in their sprawling gardens, transforming the Egyptian concept of a sacred, ordered journey into a playful, aristocratic pastime. Walking through these green corridors was a form of living theater, a miniature adventure that echoed the labyrinth's original purpose as a path of discovery, even if the destination was now a charming folly rather than a divine revelation. This architectural idea then bled directly into fiction. The most famous labyrinth of all is not in Egypt but in the pages of Greek myth housing the Minotaur. Yet, as we traced earlier, that very myth was likely born from Greek travelers trying to make sense of the ruined complex at Hawara. The story of Theseus navigating the Cretan maze, guided by Ariadne's thread, is a direct narrative echo of a priest's ritual journey through the sacred passages, a hero replacing a holy man in a battle against inner chaos. This template proved endlessly adaptable. In modern cinema, the labyrinth remains a potent setting for challenge and transformation. The shifting, impossible corridors of the Overlook Hotel in The Shining are a psychological labyrinth, trapping its inhabitants in a maze of their own madness. The glittering, goblin-guarded labyrinth in the film Labyrinth is a classic fairy tale rendition, where a teenage girl must outwit a magical king to save her brother, the maze itself a character of trickery and deceit. Even the wizarding world of Harry Potter presents the Triwizard Tournament's final task as a vast, magical hedge maze, a direct nod to this ancient tradition of using a confusing path to test a hero's worth. The concept has exploded in the interactive realm of video games. Countless games use labyrinthine dungeons as their core structure, from the sprawling, trapped hallways of classic role-playing games to the ever-changing rooms of survival horror titles. Navigating these digital mazes recreates the same feeling of awe, dread, and determination that an ancient Egyptian must have felt entering Amenemhat's great complex. Every time a player meticulously maps a dungeon or follows a quest marker through a winding city, they are walking in the symbolic footsteps of those who once explored the original labyrinth. This enduring legacy proves that the structure's true power was never just in its stones, but in its underlying idea. It tapped into a fundamental human fascination with the journey into the unknown, the challenge of finding order in chaos, and the hope of emerging transformed with a secret prize. The physical labyrinth is gone, but its blueprint is permanently etched into our stories, our games, and our art, ensuring that this wonder of the ancient world will never be truly lost. But the certainty surrounding Hawara is not as absolute as it seems. A growing number of voices within Egyptology challenge the idea that the labyrinth was a single, monolithic building confined to one location. They propose a radically different vision, one where the labyrinth was not a place, but a concept, a network of sacred and administrative structures spread across the entire Fayum region. Imagine the term not as a proper name for one building, but as a descriptive label for an entire district of power. In this view, the colossal foundation at Hawara was just one piece of the puzzle, the grand mortuary temple for Amenemhat III. Meanwhile, other key sites could have housed different functions. The city of Shedit, the cult center for the crocodile god Sobek, might have contained the primary religious labyrinth, a temple complex so vast and intricate it earned the name. Another site, known as Biamu, features the ruins of two massive stone pedestals that once supported colossal statues of Amenemhat III, statues so tall they could be seen for miles across the water. Could these have been another monumental gateway, another node in this regional network? This theory suggests that the labyrinth described by Herodotus was not a building he saw in its entirety, but a collection of sites he was shown, their combined grandeur and complexity leaving him with the impression of a single, impossible structure. The very word labyrinth might have been a Greek misunderstanding of an Egyptian term for a specific type of temple design, one characterized by many columns, countless chambers, and a deliberately overwhelming layout meant to inspire awe. This transforms the mystery entirely. We are no longer searching for one lost building, but for the ghost of an entire sacred landscape, its pieces scattered and buried across the Fayum. The true labyrinth may have been a kingdom in miniature, a web of stone so vast that no single ruin could ever contain its legend. Every wall and corridor was a deliberate stroke in a larger cosmic blueprint. The labyrinth's design was almost certainly based on sacred geometry, a language of numbers and shapes the Egyptians believed were the building blocks of creation itself. This was not merely decorative, it was functional, a way to encode their most profound understanding of the universe into stone. The perfect symmetry of its 3,000 rooms, split evenly above and below, reflects their obsession with balance or mot, the principle that held chaos at bay. The very shape of the complex, a vast rectangle, could have mirrored the Egyptian conception of the world, a flat plain surrounded by the primordial waters of chaos. But the alignment likely went far deeper. Key corridors and gateways might have been positioned to capture the sun's rays on specific days, like the solstices or equinoxes, transforming the entire structure into a giant calendar and observatory. Imagine a shaft of light piercing the pre-dawn gloom of the winter solstice, sliding down a specific hallway to illuminate a statue of the sun god Ra at the precise moment of sunrise. This would make the labyrinth a machine for marking time, its stones tracking the celestial cycles that dictated planting, harvest, and religious festivals. The geometry served a higher purpose, connecting the earthly realm directly to the heavens. The repeating patterns of its columns and halls could have represented the orderly, predictable motion of the stars, a physical model of a cosmos governed by divine law rather than random chance. To walk its paths was to traverse a map of the universe, learning one small but vital place within an infinite, harmonious design. What appears to us as a maze was to its creators the ultimate expression of clarity, a silent symphony of mathematical perfection playing out in stone. This very connection forces us to confront one of Egyptology's most enduring puzzles. Pharaoh Amenemhat III built his pyramid at Hawara, a structure intended to be his eternal tomb, yet his sarcophagus was discovered not there, but miles away in a second, smaller pyramid at Dosha. Why would a pharaoh of such immense power and foresight construct two pyramids? The answer may lie not in the pyramids themselves, but in the labyrinth that stood between them. What if his pyramid at Hawara was merely a decoy, an elaborate false front designed to draw the attention of tomb robbers away from his true, final resting place? The real burial chamber of the god-king may have been concealed deep within the labyrinth's forbidden, subterranean level. This would be the ultimate security measure, hiding his body not in a solitary, obvious monument, but within the heart of a sprawling, sacred city. After all, who would think to look for a pharaoh's tomb in the basement of what appeared to be a giant administrative headquarters and temple? The genius of this plan is breathtaking. While robbers were busy dismantling the pyramid, the pharaoh's mummy would lie undisturbed in a chamber far below, protected by the labyrinth's immense complexity and its sacred, guarded status. But the reasoning goes far beyond simple security. To be buried within the labyrinth was to be interred at the very center of the cosmos he had helped create. His body would not just be in a tomb, it would reside within a perfect, functioning model of the underworld. Imagine the power of this symbolism. His sarcophagus would have been placed in the deepest chamber, aligning him with the sun god's nightly journey through the Duat. Every ritual performed in the thousands of rooms above his head would not just be worship, it would be fuel for his divine transformation, a continuous cosmic engine ensuring his successful rebirth each dawn alongside the sun. He would become a permanent part of the machine, his spirit woven into the very rituals that sustained Egypt. The pyramid was a statement of his power in life, a landmark for the ages. But the labyrinth's secret chamber was a far grander ambition, a direct conduit to eternity, ensuring he would rule as a god over a perfectly ordered universe forever. The labyrinth was the ultimate expression of Middle Kingdom Egypt at the peak of its power. This was not a period of simple pyramid building, but a golden age of intellectual and administrative genius, a time when the state functioned with the precision of a machine. To understand the labyrinth is to understand how Egypt truly worked. Its thousands of rooms were not just stone and mortar, they were the physical manifestation of a bureaucracy so advanced it could feed millions, manage vast resources, and coordinate rituals across a unified kingdom. This was the operational heart of an empire, and its scale proves a level of centralized control that rivals modern nations. The labyrinth shows us that the pharaoh's power was not just about commanding armies, but about mastering information, logistics, and the human spirit. Its very existence rewrites our perception of ancient governance, moving it from a primitive monarchy to a sophisticated, almost modern administrative state. But its significance cuts even deeper than politics. The labyrinth was the spiritual engine of its age. The complex rituals performed within its walls were not superstition. They were considered vital, practical work to maintain the cosmic balance. The priests walking its corridors believed they were literally holding back chaos and ensuring the sun would rise, the Nile would flood, and life would continue. This building was the interface where human effort met divine will. If we could truly rediscover it, we would not just be finding an old temple. We would be recovering the complete blueprint for how one of the world's greatest civilizations believed the universe functioned. The labyrinth holds the answers to questions we have not even thought to ask about Egyptian science, astronomy, and theology. Its potential library could contain the lost books of the Middle Kingdom, detailed records of daily life, and advanced mathematical texts that shaped the ancient world. This is why the labyrinth remains archaeology's ultimate prize. Finding it would not simply add a footnote to history. It would force us to rewrite entire chapters, revealing the breathtaking depth of a civilization we have only just begun to understand. From the astonished words of Herodotus to the silent echoes on a radar screen, our journey through this lost wonder has spanned millennia. We have uncovered a structure far grander than a simple maze, a cosmic engine designed to govern both an empire and the afterlife. Its true purpose was to embody the very order of the universe, a machine of stone where priests performed rituals to keep the sun rising and the Nile flooding. The most compelling secret remains that sealed underground level, a forbidden model of the underworld that may still hold the pharaoh's true tomb and a library of lost knowledge. The tantalizing possibility endures that the heart of the labyrinth is not gone, but merely sleeping, protected by water and sand, waiting for the day we possess the technology to peer into its submerged chambers without causing its final destruction. So what do you believe is its ultimate secret? Is it the lost scrolls of a civilization, the final resting place of a god-king, or something even more profound that we have yet to conceive? The story is not over. Future excavations armed with new tools and relentless curiosity may one day solve this ancient riddle. Until then, the legend lives on. If this mystery captured your imagination, help us keep the search alive. Like this video, subscribe for more journeys into the forgotten past, and share your own theory in the comments below. What do you think is waiting in the dark?